Hello and welcome to LinkedIn Live. So happy to have you here today. I have two very special guests here with me today, Curtis and Susan Marie. Welcome.
Hi,
Hi,
Sean.
Sean. Hello, everyone.
Yes.
everyone.
So Curtis and Susan Marie are longtime friends and connections. And what they're going to talk about today is actually how I initially met them. So we've had the opportunity together over these weeks and months to talk about so many different business opportunities and jobs and roles. And it has been a bit of a turbulent time in the Salesforce community, certainly with layoffs and lots of jobs, many conversations about freelancing and side gigs and should I start a business or go get another job. And I think we always come back to this idea of there seems to be tremendous value in having some kind of a side business, if not a full-time entrepreneurship. And there's many reasons to do that, but everyone really has to wonder, how do I do it? And the reason that I invited Curtis and Susan Marie is this is their expertise, and they have had this opportunity personally and professionally now for quite a long time. And Susan Marie is a second generation, 12-year practicing attorney. And she was introduced to the idea of that kind of side hustle and gig economy, and really did that and took that opportunity and transitioned from her practice, which was a huge decision after that much time and the investment in her legal career. And she did that to spend time at that time with her toddlers and really immediately recognized that collective, the benefits of having that business. And Curtis has a 30-year profession of being a photographer and really successful photographer. And he also had that moment of time of really considering what to be doing into the future. And did it make sense to have something perhaps on the side and diversify? So he'll share with you there. And both Curtis and Susan Marie they serve on the National Small Business Council. And so they're advisors at a high national level. And they are also owners of MyCore. And they're part of that team there. So MyCore's mission is to be the world's most people-centric company. And they do a lot of work with organizations around bookkeeping, payroll, benefits, HR, legal. So they have that perspective of being owners themselves and advising many, many individuals. And they've trained thousands, and I've had the opportunity to learn so much from them, and in person, virtually. So you will have a lot of fun. Our time is short and sweet today, but please connect with Susan Marie is active here on LinkedIn, and we will share a link as well. We're going to talk here for about a half hour, give some great insight and advice, and then we have a link to a more detailed, and they can answer some questions. But they really, at the end of the day, their why is their family and their kids and their grandkids. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Sean, thanks so much for having us, and that was a great introduction. I just love hearing all those cool things about my wife. I'm kind of, it's weird hearing stuff about myself, but yeah, what a great intro to talk about sexy topics like payroll and HR and benefits and legal and all of that kind of stuff. So I hope everybody realizes that there's some solutions and some ways that we have found to be able to help navigate all of those kinds of things.
Perfect. And we're going to have an open conversation. Those of you, feel free to drop anything in the chat if you'd like. One of the reasons that I met Susan Marie at the time first was I had a journey into doing some 1099 work alongside of a full-time career for many of the benefits that we'll talk about, and ended up not getting paid. And it was a really difficult experience. And through some advice and learning that how you set up your business, who you get your advice from when things go wrong is so important to have somebody in your corner. But I'd love to ask both of you, you've been through it personally, and now you work with a lot of individuals as well who are entrepreneurs, either as a side opportunity or full-time. what do you think about when it's really the best of it? Like why do people benefit from having a business? Do you, feel free to share your experiences or maybe a story or two of like really why would people want to lean into this idea if they haven't already?
That's a great question, Sean, to kick off with. And I too want to thank you for the introduction and just the friendship and the collegiality that we've shared over the years. And I'm not, my disclaimer is anything I say is not legal advice. But I tell you what, having kids, like you mentioned, for me was really a turning point. And not that you can't work a job and have kids and raise a family, of course, but you ask about why leaning into something that on the maybe starts off on the side, but could even potentially be something that you do full time, which is really what happened for me. Well, the reason was to have autonomy, to have that ability to be in control of my own choices in terms of how I spend my time and where I want to grow as a person. And in fact, it was a lot of growing. I mean, anytime you step away from maybe what you've been doing, which for me at the time was 12 years of practicing law. I mean, I'd always worked in that capacity at a job, right? So I had not had my own business before kind of stepping into a side endeavor. And then all of a sudden you're a business owner. And that really, really what led me now today to want to work with business owners was my own journey in becoming one myself. It's a real eye opener. And Curtis, I think that's really kind of what happened. Curtis has an interesting journey of becoming a business owner himself at a very young age.
Yeah, and you talk about being tossed into something like that. I went to work for the local hometown photography studio. We're in the town, little town where I grew up, and in the role as a photographer. And so I worked there, and then about 8 years into that journey, the owner said, "Hey, Curtis, you want to buy the business?" And so I found myself kind of thrust into business ownership, really without having any kind of knowledge about what it takes to actually run a successful business. So I learned quickly that to surround yourself with people that know those kind of answers, that can help with some of the advisory type of things, because I don't think most people get into any kind of business, whether it be your primary business or a side hustle, something like that, because you love doing all of the the bookkeeping and the legal and all of the kinds of things that come along with we all start out because it's something we enjoy doing, whether it's baking cakes or taking pictures or whatever that, or you're good at some particular something, and that's where we started business in that. And then we realize, wow, as we start realizing, seeing a little bit of success, then you've got to start being responsible for some of the business type things, taxes and all of that. So for me, that was really kind of a crash course, and that led to a 30 plus year career in doing that along the line. And that's really where I was introduced to the idea of entrepreneurship, where I thought, well, times are changing a little bit. Maybe I should look at some other opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm one of my very favorite books. It's now a classic, which just blows my mind, is The E-Myth. And it was all about really that entrepreneur, that ability to put things in place and treat every business like a franchise, that you have all of the components in place. And I just was so glad to learn that early on. And you just mentioned something that was really the first trigger for me, besides I think having a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, was the tax laws so favor business owners. And the first time I did my taxes after having, and it was not much of a side business. It really wasn't a huge endeavor. The financial impact for me, and I, not an accountant, and everyone's situation's different, but it was stunning, the difference that it made. Are there other elements that you think people may be surprised of in terms of benefits of having a business, whether it's again that freelance side business, 1099 income, or just making a leap and starting a business?
Well, it's to me, it's like your income, right? Is like it's almost like a bucket, and you want to think about having like different kind of faucets coming into the bucket to fill it up. And I just think that if we've learned anything over the past couple of years and the times that we've been through, is how change can come suddenly and in ways that we could never have expected. And so I think it can be intimidating sometimes to people out of the gate, the thought of starting a business, especially if you're already working at a job. But it just is like the smart thing to do today too. That would be my thinking for anybody out there, and the right kind of context and starting one will give you the right kind of support so that you won't be alone. And that's a lot of what I think Curtis and Shellen and I have all found, is that having an environment where you can learn as you grow is really important. And then having access to advisors that can help set you up for success, because getting caught off guard, I think, is a very common thing too. I mean, I find a lot of business owners they've embarked on their business and they haven't even formed an entity, for example, like an actual, like an LLC, for example, or an S corp. Again, I'm not here to give advice, but we have the idea of what the business is, but we don't have the idea of how to do it, like structurally or properly. So that's something that I think that Curtis and I have really been grateful for, finding some of the solutions. And that's why we're in the work that we're in today, is to help bring the same solutions that we found to other people.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think that I love talking with people that are starting their own business, or maybe they've been doing it for a little while, and that's been their kind of their side hustle, and I can come alongside, and I feel some of the stresses and pains that they're going through, because it's like, oh, I know I need to do this, or oh, I've gotten behind on these filings or this or that. And it's so easy to do because it's all consuming, really, in many cases, when you are starting your own endeavor, and no matter how big or how small. And to be able to have access to, say, for example, a lawyer, to be able to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking of being able to do, and be that sounding board from a legal standpoint, be able to say, well, hey, this is, what if I do this, what are the consequences? And to be able to have that advice and consultation, because I always like to say, and I'm not the lawyer in this family, but the law is legal. It's not always logical. The law is legal. It's not always logical. I mean, I wish you could just go out and do the logical thing and everything would be okay in life, but not so. I mean, and especially today, I think more than ever, you got to have a lawyer that's a phone call away, and to be able to help you navigate some of those things. Now, why don't we use that access to lawyers more frequently and more on a regular basis? That's an easy answer. It's too expensive. And so that's really where we have found some great solutions for giving people that access to a law firm.
Yeah. I know from my perspective, it was so interesting, just the practical difference when I was feeling quite confident in my ability to communicate and having no reaction. And I had the law on my side. It was interesting then being able to actually say, well, I'm going to have my lawyer take a peek at that and actually mean it. It was a huge difference. But I would say, so one of the things in the Salesforce community, there is the opportunity to do consulting. So someone may be full-time and they might have a great opportunity, but part of growing your career is learning different technologies or having hands-on experience. And so having something in place that allows you over the years to do projects, but to keep them and have a real business that you can refer back to on LinkedIn, on your resume, that you're not just saying, I'm a consultant in between paid gigs, but that you really might have 5 to 7 years of consulting experience, that you can actually put that in place. And time goes by quickly and you really can do that. What kind of things do you see that has gone sideways for individuals, that they started a business or they, went down the road, but what sort of things do you see people making mistakes and should really consider? We talked about some of the bright spots, but what are some of the downsides of entrepreneurship and business ownership?
Well, for years, Shellen, when I embarked on a side endeavor, I just was putting the money into a personal bank account without understanding, for example, that it's like you get that first dollar bill. It's almost like when you go into a restaurant, and you see that they've like stapled that dollar bill, their first dollar that they got in their business on the wall. Well, that really needs to be accounted for, right? Like it starts with like accounting for tax purposes and bookkeeping for just having that ledger, right? That's tracking how that dollar is being spent. And I mean, I went for a long time before I really kind of like understood that, oh yeah, I need to be doing that. And like you said, if you do it from the get-go, then you've got a track record of your business. And it's almost like a continuum. What I learned, that it's like you've got that dollar bill, you're tracking it, you've got like you're taking care of your books. And then if you grow to a point, even if it's just yourself, or like in my case, my husband and I, we wanted to form an entity and have the entity pay us, right? So 2 separate bank accounts, the entity pays us personally. And that is a type of payroll. So we had to learn about payroll, which comes with the ability to handle taxes. So again, it was kind of this continuum that I just, before you're a business owner, you just don't really have, I think, the need and sometimes the awareness of how that impacts you, right? And then sometimes you grow to the point where you have other employees. You might bring on a couple of contractors or employees, and then you've got payroll for them. And then you might need an employee handbook, or you might have HR issues. So that continuum continues on, and you might want to bring them benefits, and you might have legal issues. So like, how can I make sure that I've got like help along that continuum? That was something I've really learned about. And that's all about being a business owner and doing it right.
Yeah. And really, I think, as Susan, I mean, this would speak to that trying to do kind of that back end ourselves. And that's something that we all, when we're doing that, starting out that new little endeavor that may grow, as Susan Marie said, all that money just coming into your personal bank account, it all looks great, but there's going to be those tax bills to pay. And there's things that an entity, an LLC, for example, can maybe tax deductible to the company, and not to, whereas it may not be for your, if you're just taking those funds into your personal account. And that's really where even that the bucket analogy, that Susan Marie mentioned. I mean, in our case, we actually, and here's a little tidbit, we met in this side endeavor that we are doing. And so that's where, as we kind of joined forces, so to speak, both, anyway, and got married, that we created an overarching entity for all of those different faucets going into that bucket. So all of that income from our different endeavors goes into the different faucets into that bucket, and that's the overarching LLC. And then we pay ourselves as an employee of that entity that oversees all of that. So it just allows us to be able to have more, and again, this is not tax or legal advice here, but you'd want to talk with a professional about what's the best situation for your own situation.
Yeah, I think one of, the pandemic had many downfalls, but one, I think, of the most exciting things to come out of that experience is really, many of us had the opportunity to work in a very flexible way, kind of from anywhere, however we wanted, but many of us did not. And the pandemic really forced every company to deal with that. And there's so many more people who now can work in many different ways. They can start companies in different ways. But one of the challenges with that has become, and I think from the Salesforce ecosystem, really interesting, is you have all these people in different states. And that can be a really complicated situation if you have 1099 contractors or people that you're working with, or employees in various states. Are there any other sort of challenges that you see from just maybe thinking in terms of that Salesforce world of you're working with clients, there's lots of people remote. Any other kind of business legal elements that you think people should keep in mind?
Yeah, really. Well, the world has gotten so much smaller, it it it's mind blowing that each each state, for example, and even sometimes a city within a state may have a different layer of taxation that may be required for you to do business in that state or to have an employee or a contractor in that other state. And so again, it adds more, it kind of, people feel kind of underwater when they start realizing all of this. And it just kind of keeps circling back to the fact that it is so important to have someone, some of the solutions that we've curated and that we've found to be able to help people navigate those kinds of things affordably. And that's, I think, one of the key things too, is that all these things that we're talking about, talking to lawyers and having accountants and bookkeepers and all of that, we've found some resources that kind of are using a crowdfunding model, where it's the ability to be able to have a lot of people that are paying a low amount, a monthly amount, for example, and a subscription-based service where it can be affordable to be able to have that kind of access to those much needed services.
Yeah, I think that the Salesforce world, like we understand that from the profession, right? That is the solution. Part of the reason Salesforce grew so much during the pandemic is that every company all of a sudden really needed to expand their capabilities. And I think as an entrepreneur, or for any of us who have those side opportunities, or maybe considering, there's some incredibly talented sales professionals who have found that they were laid off, and very shocking. And I have a lot of one-on-one conversations, and people are really thinking about what's next. And that business ownership conversation is coming up on a regular basis. But I would say there's one part of that I also hear on the one-on-one conversations that I have, is overwhelm. And there's many parents, right? There's just a lot of parents. And if you're working full time and you have a side business, or I'm going to start a company, like can I possibly balance this? What advice do you, well, I'd say, what advice do you take, right? You guys have a wonderful relationship and friendships and travel and family, but what are some of the things that have been sort of your secrets to success? And what advice have you given to business owners that you work with around being able to, build a thriving business of any size, but also have a life and have joy in your days?
That's my favorite kind of question. And we actually did hire an efficiency coach at one point to work with us. And really what's made the biggest difference, I think, Shellen, is our calendar, and really, truly, and planning, so that we plan the next day, the night before, where we plan the whole week on Sunday, and really true, like we coordinate. We've got it both digitally and we have a hard copy, so they don't even have to open my phone. I can just look down and I see what's next. And we do quarterly goal setting retreats, Curtis and I do together, because we want to, and it's a holistic look. It's not just our business, so that we take a chance to get away and just look at every facet of our life every quarter. Because as you mentioned, time can sure go fast. And you've got the whole wheel of life, and if a spoke of the wheel gets out of balance, you're not going to be rolling along very well. So we take that time to just kind of calibrate our lives, and it's a lot of fun doing that too.
Yeah, it is that little quarterly retreat and goal setting that as we call it, really not only is about our businesses, but also our family and our own personal, even our health and our wellness and all those kinds of things. We kind of have these different categories that we cover, and it's something that we do intentionally. If we can get away for a day or two, great. Kind of gets us out of our element. Kind of gets us away from dealing with stuff around the house, those kinds of things. But if not, even it's just kind of, we just intentionally do that. I think another thing, and I feel so very fortunate to have my partner in life also be my partner in business, and so that buy-in or the support of your partner is so important, because at the end of the day, that's really it's funny because we come together we have our two separate offices here in our house, and yet we still come together at the end of the day, and it's like kind of debriefing a little bit. But we have, because we've got set those goals, and we're seeing, well, hey, how are we coming along on these particular aspects of our life? And so that support and that buy-in really of a person in your life is so important.
Perfect. Well, I thank you both so much for joining. I know this was kind of short and sweet. I get asked this question all the time, like, how do I put this together? Do I know anyone who can help me with this or point me in the right direction? And I do. And it's Susan Marie and Curtis. And I posted a link in the comments, and it says Susan Marie and Curtis, and it's directly following. If you want to go ahead and pop onto that link and actually see some of the tools and learn more about the tools that they've discovered, certainly ones that I've had success using over a number of years, please join us. If you're not able to join live, there will also be the recording there that you can find on that link as well. So, but for now, thank you so much for joining me here. And I look forward to having you back another time, and we'll source some good questions and get some more advice from you next time.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Shellen. This has been fun.